Hello, welcome to Signal Noise, podcast brought to you by Market Once and ROI Rocket. My name is Brian Lamar. I'm your co-host, along with, as always, Andrew DeCilles. Hello, Andrew. How are you, sir?
I'm wonderful. Good afternoon, Brian. How's it going over there? An hour away in Cincinnati.
It's going all right. And this is probably our last podcast recording with this current equipment. So
Yes.
hopefully next one. Sorry for this, Brandon. We'll introduce you in a second. But we're getting new equipment for the podcast, but it's always exciting. You do that a couple times, once a year or so. Yeah, things are going well. It snowed the other day, and now it's like 55 and beautiful out, and end of the week. So I'm excited.
Absolutely.
Joining us today, exciting guest, Brandon Richard. He is the senior vice president and AI enthusiast at the Link Group. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hey guys, I'm excited to be here. Kind of bummed I'm on the old audio equipment, but
Of course, I should have said that. Is it no? You're in Raleigh, Durham, is that right?
that's right. Yeah.
Not snowing down there yet, is it?
No, it's been cold the past few days, but otherwise it's kind of nice today. 50, 60, sunny.
Cool. Yeah, today, we have. I love these. I love episodes like this, and our topic is literally 4 words, and we'll see where this goes. Hopefully, we have more than 4 words to say. It's artificial intelligence and marketing research, and I'm gonna kind of kick it over to Andrew today. I think that MRX. I use the abbreviation as a word for those listeners. Artificial intelligence and MRX. I guess that's one word. But excited to see where this conversation goes, and you're really involved in a lot of this stuff. So yeah, we're excited for the conversation.
One of the reasons we were so excited to talk to Brandon about this is that there's so much buzz going around the space. I probably have the acronym AI leave my mouth 400 times a day. I'm using Claude and Perplexity and ChatGPT dozens and dozens and dozens of times a day, which apparently is a lot of water and energy that is on my soul. But the point being that we cannot escape this topic. At the same time, there is a lack of clarity around what is actually effective, what people are actually using, and what's really a good tool for marketing research. And the Link Group in particular has been very much on the forefront of utilizing these tools. They're also members of the Global Data Quality Initiative with the Insights Association, heavily attending a lot of conferences this year. And in our partnership with them and our discussions with them, I've just been so impressed by the systematic and scientific approach that they're taking towards incorporating artificial intelligence into their research processes. That's a lot of setup, Brandon. I would love to, have you continue to do that, but really just can't wait to hear about not only the fruits of AI, but also how you've kind of separated the wheat from the chaff, if you will.
We kind of first started down this AI journey about 3 years ago. So it was spring 2022. We went to one of Inside Association's conferences, and that's actually where I first met the two of you. And we came back from that being like, okay, everybody's talking a lot about AI. We haven't been talking about it internally. We put together a task force, and fast forward 3 years, we've tested dozens of different platforms and tools and things. We've built things internally that we're using. We're incorporating into day-to-day stuff. But I think what's been most fascinating is if I reflect back to 3 years ago, there was so much kind of angst around it about like, what does this mean? Where are we going? I still feel that a little bit today, but I feel like we're starting to find our footing. And also, like, the bottom hasn't fallen out of market research in the past 3 years, like I think some people might have predicted. So I'm on the optimistic side of the equation, thinking about where it's going to take our industry. And there's going to be disruptions, there's going to be challenges, but I think AI can be leveraged for good in our industry.
So I'd love to hear, let's kind of divide this up into a couple different channels of discussion. First off, let's separate synthetic sample from AI tools. I know that you've experimented with both and want to talk about both. When you think about artificial intelligence broadly, which application, as far as an AI moderator, so the AI is interacting with a human, or perhaps it's a digital twin, so the human interacting with the AI, you know, What kind of tools have you experimented with and which have been more and less effective?
We've been trying to kind of think through what are like the big categories of AI tools in market research today. And I think I'm going to name like four categories. And so I think one is knowledge management or synthesis. And so this is our end clients are using this functionality a lot more. So they're trying to take all of their transcripts, all from interviews or focus groups, all their data, all of their reports, putting them into a big data lake, and then being able to query that, mine it, create synthetic personas from that. I think that's kind of like one area that we've kind of built some things internally we're using, but we're not really playing there as much since our clients are kind of building that out themselves. And there's a lot of companies focused on that. Like the other big category of tools is around AI moderation, which I feel like the industry hasn't landed on the language for that yet. Is it AI moderation, AI conversational surveys, AI probing, qualit scale, quali quant? Like, we gotta pick a name. But there's like that bucket, and now we've probably tested a dozen different of those tools. It feels like I see a new one at every conference I go to. I think that has real potential. We're pretty excited about that. We see it as a way to augment kind of the human moderation that we really excel at. And then we have synthetic, which we'll kind of like table for now, but virtual persona, synthetic data, synthetic sample, all of that. And then the fourth category is I just kind of call miscellaneous. So this is where we're using like AI avatars, AI video generation, AI podcast, AI brainstorming agents and partners. These aren't, I don't feel like fundamentally changing market research. These are all just kind of supportive in the market research or reporting that we're doing every day.
Not to add a additional category, but have you done any formal exploration into using AI in like the drafting of a questionnaire or the analysis of data, things like that? So it's kind of a tool. Would you put that into the miscellaneous category or maybe its own bucket?
Yeah. We've been using several different synthesis tools to kind of aid in reporting. To mixed success, I haven't found anything that's going to come anywhere close to like a client-ready deliverable, but I do think of them as kind of like a brainstorming partner and using some of these synthesis tools to review open ends or review transcripts to make sure I haven't missed anything. So it helps me be more comprehensive, but it can't connect a finding. It can't translate a finding into an insight and then connect that to strategy and the so what for a product or brand. Who knows? Maybe one day it will, but at least today, I still feel like that's where the human in the loop is critical. And then, yeah, we're using it we built some internal tools to help with like document development, so questionnaires or discussion guides. But when we built those, I mean, our goal was to like our success was, can this get us to like 70% of the way there? I mean, we have no expectation that these are going to be getting us to 100%. The work slop is a common term these days as it relates to AI. And like, if we're just using AI to generate a discussion guide or questionnaire and then just shipping that off, that's just creating work slop that we're pushing onto our clients. So again, it's augmenting what we do, but I don't see it, at least in the near term, replacing humans writing a discussion guide or questionnaire.
Very interesting. Yeah, and I think that productivity tool with the human in the loop is generally about, if we do a temperature check, I think that's generally about where people feel like tools are right now. 3 years ago, they're all kind of interesting but ineffective, and we're getting to that point where it's 70%, and they're getting better. That's for sure. Certainly becoming faster and more robust. But as far as that kind of next level, getting the strategy out of it, they're really great at finding dots, but connecting them, maybe not. I would like to dig into, so you said knowledge management, moderation, conversation, things of that nature, synthesis, and then we'll call it miscellaneous and productivity, things of that nature. When you're thinking about the moderation techniques, right? This is something where it's kind of the quintessential benefit of our artificial intelligence is we can take Brandon. Brandon is an expert. He has years and years and years of experience. And now I can scale you, right? they can listen to hundreds of hours of you moderating and interviewing people, train it that way, and then have it go, interview people on your behalf. You said that you've trialed a lot of these different tools. What makes an AI moderation tool, in your mind, like effective or ineffective? What are some of the places where they really excel and really fail?
So if we kind of break it down into three different components, you have the setup part of the tool. And that's just really comes down to like, is it efficient and easy platform to use? I would argue they're all pretty similar. So like we're not seeing major differences in terms of how easy or difficult it is to set these platforms up. The kind of middle category here is how good are they at quote unquote moderating. I prefer to just talk about it as like AI probing or AI conversational surveys. And we have seen some differences there. So there are some that feel more sophisticated in understanding the objectives and the guardrails that you've put into the platform and then probing accordingly. So it's like the quality of probing, it's also knowing when to stop probing. So some of them just go too far and they just like keep asking. And you're like, stop. That's a terrible experience for the respondent. So we've seen some differences there, and that's probably where we are most particular about because we do, I mean, a significant portion of our business is qual. We have like 40 in-house moderators. We have people who've been moderating for 20 plus years. And so like we are very particular about moderation. And so that's something we pay particular attention to. And then the third component is on the back end. So when we talk about AI moderation and like doing this at scale, that means someone then either has to listen to all of these or read all of these, or you have to trust that the AI analysis tools on the back end are really good at synthesis. Because if you're not going to read all of if you go out and do 100 now instead of 100 IDIs instead of 20, well, if you're not going to read all of those or watch all of those, you better trust your synthesis tool. And so that's the third place we've seen some differentiation. There's some tools that are just much better at that synthesis, getting granular, being able to link back to specific transcripts, trusting that it's giving you something worthwhile.
Can I jump in really quick, Andrew? You mentioned a lot about trust, and that's where my question is going to be, is based upon my limited knowledge of what work you do, your qualitative interviews are often among sensitive topics. And do you think AI can get to the point where it can somehow develop the adequate amount of trust with a respondent to kind of draw out the insights needed for the research? I bet that's a big challenge.
It's interesting because there's two, I would say, competing arguments here. So one is kind of the easy argument that humans are better at connecting with humans. Humans are better at building rapport with humans. I, as a moderator, will be able to get deeper with someone than a computer. The other, there is another argument though that people might open up more to a computer because they're not afraid of me, a human, judging them.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I think we're kind of early in trying to figure that out. To me, it's more about the complexity of the topic at hand. These AI tools I found have been pretty good when you have a very narrow focused objective. But a lot of what we're doing in like a 60-minute IDI or 2-hour focus group is we need to cover a lot of ground. That ground may change depending on the tenor of the interview or who we're talking with in a focus group. And having that flexibility is a lot harder to like coach an AI moderator to just do for 100 interviews or 100 focus groups.
I'm curious, in addition to, like you said, that sometimes the AI tools can be like, the 3-year-old child just asking again and why, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. And of course that is a horrible experience, whether it's a moderator asking you to tell them more or my kids in the back seat saying, are we there yet? 75. In addition to that, though, you said that you were seeing differences in the quality of the probing, right? And I wonder if you could be more specific about that, and particularly if you can recall an example in one of these trials that you found to be either particularly effective or ineffective in the way that the AI tool conducted the interview.
So when it comes to moderation, it's really an art to try to figure out what in the moment what path with this respondent is going to generate the most insight. And sometimes that path is kind of the obvious one that's most connected with your client's objectives. Sometimes it's they say something that you haven't heard before, or that's more nuanced, or is an edge case. And you actually want to go down that path because you want to see if it unlocks a different type of thinking that you haven't come across before. What we found is the AIs typically go down that more well-trodden path. And so they'll kind of like the obvious path to walk down based on the objectives because that's what you've told it to do. And so it might not chase down the edge case as much, which in qualitative research is where a lot of times it just triggers you to think differently and opens up new possibilities. And so that's kind of where we've seen differences. In terms of like a specific example, so imagine you're interviewing a physician about why you would use a certain product or a certain treatment. And they say like, yeah, I'm going to use product X because I think it's the best. Well, so the AI moderator will be like, okay, why do you think it's the best? And they'll say, well, it's got good efficacy and safety. Sometimes that might just move, the AI moderator might just move on. But like anyone who's done any market research with physicians knows like, of course, efficacy and safety is why the best treatment is going to be the best treatment. It's about understanding how you define efficacy. What's about this efficacy is different. Determining is it more on the efficacy side of the equation or more on the safety side of the equation, and like getting to that level of nuance is we've found some of these platforms can like start to get there and some of them can't.
That makes sense. Right. And it's almost that, and I haven't used any of these particular tools because Brian and I are quant guys. It does seem to me that sort of, even like as you and I are having a conversation now, every time one of us stops talking, there's a pause. Kind of have to decide, like, am I going to ask you something different? Are we going to go deeper here? How do I want the conversation to proceed? Because in some ways, I'm interviewing you right now. There's no discussion guide. There's nothing like that going on, but it would make sense that, yeah, the AI is going to be looking at its custom set of instructions, which are the discussion guide and the research brief and things like that, and wouldn't know to, like you said, to chase down that edge case or to find that nuance, because it would say, yes, I've discovered the reason that they are choosing product X instead of product Y. Checkbox, move on.
I think one other piece that I posted on LinkedIn about this past week that is probably not talked about enough with AI moderation, but also just AI at large in market research is how much of our learning and how much of the insights that are generated on a project are from the final output alone versus kind of the friction throughout the entire process. And so if we as an industry say all that matters is what's in that PowerPoint at the end of a project, then we're at risk because AI will be able to create you a PowerPoint and it will be able to sound compelling. That's entirely why they are built. They are built to sound like humans and sound really compelling. But if we take a step back and say, well, yes, the final output is important, but also it's that learning journey and like hearing directly from your customers and qual, having those meetings along the way in quant and kind of hearing everybody provide feedback on a questionnaire. And as you have those discussions, you start to realize maybe this question isn't as important as this question. And so I think as an industry, we have to say, well, is that we all want to move faster. Everybody wants to go faster. But is there a tipping point where we move too fast that we lose the friction, we lose those moments that are actually generating a lot of the interesting insights that we end a project with?
And just to be clear, you're not only speaking of the friction created during the research process that would cause you to adapt, right? Things that you're finding out while you're moderating. But your assertion is that there is value in learning to the client from, like you said, having a meeting about the questionnaire, prioritizing the different research objectives, bobbing and weaving and pivoting as different challenges come up. And of course, if we just turn that over to an AI and it goes into a black box and does everything, and not interacting with the client, then they would lose the benefit of that. Is that a fair summarization?
Yep. And then it begs the question, why does a marketing team even need a market research department if they can just type into an AI black box and get a PowerPoint from it and it just does it all? So like to me, this is foundational to our industry and the value of our industry. It's not just the output. It's all the steps along the way and the thinking along the way that builds and iterates and pivots. That's what makes the output valuable.
That's really fascinating. I've never thought about that before. And that's not even about artificial intelligence. Thank you for that.
I mean, it's like,
That's great.
so it's like, that's a like a dystopian future that could
Right.
be a consequence of everybody just saying AI is so much faster and it gets us a good enough outcome. So it's worth getting good enough to save money and time. But I think we have to flip it on our heads. It's like, well, but what does that mean for market research as a whole? If we're only evaluating things on speed and time and good enough.
Yeah, and it's that good enough that has always really bugged me, because the truth of the matter is that there are some decisions where good enough is probably okay. There are a lot of surveys that we run that might be for like R&D, and thus a go, no go, yes or no is good. And it doesn't matter if it was 93% or 72% because it was more than 40, right? However, like you said, if you're always chasing that faster, cheaper, this is good enough, then who's going to be around or trained or have a like sustainable business? Because for 90% of the projects, good enough was okay. And so we've just been using AI. Like it's not sustainable as an industry to go in that direction, because then when you do have the like multi-million-dollar rebrand, or the like foundational messaging research, like how are we really going to even convey what this product is, and it does matter that it's precise, but there's 1 in 5 researchers still have a job because you've been doing all your studies into a chat bot for a year.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't end up working.
So if I like really just simplified, like really overly simplified the point of market research, it's to give some decision maker confidence in their decision. So there's companies that don't really believe in market research. Their marketers, their R&D departments, etc. They're confident in what they know and they're just gonna do it. There's other companies that they believe in market research. They want it to improve the confidence of the decision at hand. Well, if we just kind of outsource everything to AI, then we have to trust that it's accurate and right. And that's where I started to go down this path of like, the people making these large language models don't even know why they do the things they do sometimes. And like AI is non-deterministic, so every single outcome from AI is going to be different. You type the exact same prompt, it's going to be different. And there's just so much kind of unknown with all this technology that it's kind of bizarre to me that we could even be talking about a world in which like AI replaces market research, because market research is supposed to improve confidence. And if we're not even confident in how these systems are working, how can we be confident in the output that they provide?
Yeah, so I think that's a good segue to get us kind of back on track moving through that, because first of all, I agree with you completely. And I'm also in the optimistic side that I think AI is just going to make us better and faster, and it will not faster in the sense of we're going to turn around a 3-week project in 3 days, but faster in the sense of it will give us more time to spend on doing the things that only humans can do, and we'll be able to produce more value in that same 3 weeks. Not yet, maybe it gets cut down to 2, but the point is that we can spend more time doing the things that only humans can do. You just spoke a lot about the confidence and the trust and the accuracy of the AI models, which was the next part of what you had said when you were trialing the moderators, was that, okay, so some of them are better, some of them are worse. Maybe it matters that maybe people are more forthcoming because it's an anonymous robot instead of a person. But really, at the end of the day, you're not going to save any time if then you have to sit there and listen to all of the interviews. So you do have to trust that. When you're comparing the different synthesis tools, how do you go about evaluating that effectiveness? Like, what metrics are you looking for? What markers are there to you that something has been successful or not? And then how much kind of variance was there among the different tools that you trialed?
I think that's probably been one of the most challenging things because it's hard to benchmark what, like with qualitative research, there is often multiple ways to report something or multiple ways to interpret something. So it is kind of challenging. There's not a clear right and wrong. So how we've been doing it thus far is we are reviewing transcript or listening to all of the AI moderated interviews that we do. And then we, as a human, writes our kind of key takeaways, our executive summary. We then go to the AI and use its synthesis tools to say, like, is what it found kind of in line with what we found? Is there anything missing that we didn't think about? And so naturally in that process, as we're using different platforms, we can just kind of see, is the AI synthesis close or not to what we came up with as humans? So it's not a, it's a subjective approach to doing it. But there are some things, like the better platforms will allow you to like click into a finding and then it kind of links you to that transcript and that quote. So it gives you some confidence that like it didn't just make this up. It's like 1-to-1, here's why. You can see like the logic. You can see like, okay, AI, you said this was a key finding. You linked to these 3 quotes. I kind of see how you got there. So that's like a more tangible thing you can look for that's helpful.
And so you've been trialing this today. Does the link group use AI moderators, AI probing in active client work, or is this something that you're still testing?
Yeah, we've done 20 plus projects with it. Thus far, it's all been used to augment, I guess, quote unquote, traditional market research. So we found it very effective to do as a pre-work exercise prior to interviews, focus groups, or surveys to like generate some kind of quick insights on key questions or to inform a discussion guide or inform a questionnaire. We've also found it helpful as a follow-up to qualitative or quantitative research where, okay, we've come out of research now and hey, we've got a few kind of places we want to clarify a little bit more. Let's just like send out this AI moderation to a few more respondents and to kind of fill in those gaps. I don't know if you would include this in the same way. I mean, we have like open-end probing in our quantitative surveys as well. That's just to me like a super low risk adoption of AI that everyone should be doing. I mean, open-end surveys are notoriously like kind of poorly completed, and so the AI probing on those does generate better responses, and like it's low cost, low lift. That's a pretty easy place to jump in.
That's fascinating. Yes, not only have you tested it, you all are using it, it's working. Those are some great use cases. Thanks for sharing those. In the interest of time and as well, I'm Brian, I will promise I'll let you take over this part of the conversation. Everyone's quite tired of hearing me talk at this point. Would love to move into one of the other sides of AI, which of course is the synthetics. And I know that Link Group has been testing synthetics. We've had a lot of conversations around, how synthetic samples could potentially be used to augment underrepresented populations, which of course, in a lot of the work that you do, if people don't know, is in the healthcare space. So having that representative sample and not losing the voice of those underrepresented people has, really important implications. So I know you've trialed quite a bit. We've participated in some of that research as well, and would just love to hear your thoughts on the synthetic samples in general, because that's such a hot topic.
Yeah, I would say our point of view is still evolving. I hear the promise of synthetic. I don't know if I had to look into my crystal ball. I don't know that it's going to live up to the promise. I think it can have a narrow, focused role. And so, expanding a part of your sample that you didn't get enough responses in because it's underrepresented in traditional samples or it's just hard to find, and kind of boosting that, I think is a fair application, because also that in how the synthetic sample works in that case, I feel like it's more credible because it's kind of building off actual human data to boost that cohort. Where I get more suspicious is when you're not using synthetic sample to boost and you're not kind of using real human data to inform your synthetic, but you're just relying on a large language model's kind of understanding of humanity, and you're saying, go create me 100 people who look like this demographic and this socioeconomic status, and create these 100 people and then survey them. I feel like for every study I see that says that works, there's 2 that says it doesn't work. And so I think personally, I'm still not a big believer in that type of synthetic. I think boosting, augmenting, maybe there's some narrow potential. The other type of synthetic that people talk about is more along the lines of like personas and developing a kind of interactive chatbot or persona based on your target customers. There was an interesting conversation about this at the IA Ignite conference a few weeks ago. And I think if you think about those personas as a way to communicate with your stakeholders, so a way for them to kind of better understand their consumer, I think that's a fair use. If you're using it to try to actually generate insights and like inform, like kind of using it to replace market research, I think there's a lot more question marks there, because it's just really dependent on the underlying model you choose, the temperature you set that model at, what that person was trained on. Is your persona supposed to kind of represent the middle of a segment, or is it a spokesperson for everyone in a segment? There's just so many variables that can lead to inaccurate responses that I would hesitate to make big decisions off of a persona today.
So the persona could be an interesting deliverable, but you certainly wouldn't query it for something new.
Yeah, like if you kind of want to, I think if you think about persona, if you program your persona to be like a spokesperson for your segment instead of being the segment, I mean, it's hard to boil down an entire segment's views and attitudes and behavior into one person that's going to answer each question. But if you design your persona to be a spokesperson for segment A, and it can tell you that, like, people in our segment generally feel like this, but there's also people in our segment who feel like these different ways, I think that's a more effective use.
Listening to reviews on synthetic sample, I'm a little bothered that I completely agree with you. I was hoping we'd disagree on something, but then maybe I'll say something here that you'll disagree with. At least I'm hoping so. I completely agree that I don't know if this will live up. Synthetic sample, going back kind of the broader topic. And I just do not see how AI can get the nuance of research and consumer behavior and the say-do gap. I don't know how it gets there. And not only that, I think it could make the problem worse. Because, for example, we have as an industry, a horrible time trying to find 18 to 34-year-old Hispanic males, right? We can get you 100, let's say. If we can then replicate them with digital twins or synthetic sample, instead of 100, we have 500, and there's no insight there, we're just making the problem worse. There probably is an insight there that we're just dismissing. That's my big fear, is that we're just going to use this to check a box and say, okay, I have a breedable base size, nothing stood out, and there's no insight there, rather than probe and do all the things that we do today to get creative, to try to understand the nuance and get to the insight and get to the so what's that I just don't think AI can get to. Please say you disagree.
No, unfortunately, I agree.
Ah,
I read an article recently where this market research company was trying to make the argument that AI and synthetics actually better when you're trying to understand system one thinking.
yeah.
It was like, it was
Yeah.
like opposite of what I normally hear. Most people are like, no, AI is, because it's not human, it doesn't have system one,
Yeah.
never going to be able to like really replicate true human behavior that isn't logical. Humans are illogical. These machines are built to be perfectly logical. And so I was like really taking issue with this article because I was just like, I don't understand. Like, if that is true, then yeah, we're toast. Like,
Right.
like what's the point of what we're doing? If
Yeah.
you could just like, if human behavior is that easy to
Yeah.
predict,
Right.
what's the point of my research?
Exactly. Exactly. No, I love the persona and the segmentation discussion because I do think that AI can help us. As marketers, our brain can only take so much information. And so that's why we have 3 to 5 segments. And then you have within those segments, maybe a couple of sub segments that we market towards, right? And we have different types of marketing strategies towards those segments. I do think that AI can help us go from 3 to 5 segments to maybe 8 to 12 segments. And instead of a couple sub segments, maybe you can get up to 30 sub segments. And it could really help inform marketing because I don't know, I just don't think our brains can work beyond that. I could be wrong there as well. And that maybe the way I'm thinking today will change. I'm still thinking this through, but on the flip side, it could also create more problems. I think every time I think of, okay, here's a use case, I keep thinking of the doomsday. Well, this is just going to make it worse.
Mm-hmm.
So that's generally where I am with AI, kind of circling back a little bit.
I feel like a lot of what we're gonna have to, well, I think what a lot of our clients are gonna have to figure out is like, what's the source of truth?
Yeah.
So in 5 years from now, you're gonna have these big data lakes just full of years
Yeah.
worth of market research data. All our clients are probably gonna have synthetic personas. They're
Yeah.
gonna be getting PowerPoints. They're gonna still be getting dashboards, and like they're going to have the data is going to be endless. So
Hmm.
then it becomes, well, like, where do you go for that source of truth? Is it,
Hmm.
do we hand it all over to AI and trust that it's going to kind of spit out the right thing, or do we still have to rely on kind of human synthesis and human judgment? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the kind of data lake problem, the can we be reduced to something quantitative? It's almost a philosophical question, right? So because if we make the assumption that human decision making can be reduced to something formulaic, and I won't go too deep into like I guess the philosophy of that, but like if you say that that is true, then the reason we can't do that today is because we don't have enough data to train the model, right? And so I think that we're gonna find because like really large companies like a Procter and Gamble or a Coca-Cola or a Microsoft or like you said that they're going to be able to codify all of the market research that they paid any agency to do in the last 20 years. And they're like, even maybe, I don't know, maybe there's stacks of them from the 70s in some basement. And they're like, how all that'll work. But if you could, and I heard Google's building a nuclear power plant to make Gemini faster, right? Because it just needs more power. In 5 years, we'll have enough data to then be able to do that. And I don't think so. And I as like a human behavioral metaphysical stance, I think that like what makes us human is the ability to do things that are not in our inherent programmatic nature, to kind of transcend that state of automatic thinking. What I'm worried about though is the predictive gonna be good enough?
Yeah.
We were talking about before. Will the predictive model be most of the time true? Now that said, I mean you're always going to have like a novel concept or something's going to happen offline. The example that I always give is I run a brand tracker with synthetic sample for airlines, and someone gets dragged down the aisle of a United flight. The AI doesn't know that, right? And so you're never going to be able to capture like the real-time climate of there was a long period of time where ChatGPT didn't know Donald Trump was president again, right? Because of the window that they confined it to. So I don't know. I think that's probably more of just like a little bit of an AI rant, than maybe a question that I was or wasn't trying to get to. But it's going to be really, really interesting to see how close the models can get once those data lakes exist.
So I think one of the things I have to talk about is like thinking about the shelf life of market research. And so every project we do is a snapshot in time. And so if you have a data lake, those are a bunch of snapshots in time, but they don't necessarily tell you what's happening today, which makes it really hard to predict what's happening tomorrow. And then this is all compounded by the underlying models that are powering all of these data lakes are trained a moment in time. And so if your model's not using the latest model, or even if it is, the underlying training can be a little outdated. And so it's hard for me as a layman to really understand how you can have something that's not currently in tune with everything happening right this moment today feed you insights that are super relevant today and likely going to be relevant tomorrow.
Could you use the past to predict the today to validate the model to help predict the future? I don't even know if we could do that, but I don't know. Maybe the people are doing that. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think a lot of people will try to do that. And I mean, there's entire businesses dedicated to forecasting. So it's not like a new concept. But also like the forecasting that I see my clients do is always off by just magnitudes.
Yeah.
And like, will AI be able to get closer? Maybe, probably will help, but will it get close enough that we're going to have that level of confidence in it? I don't know.
Well, we're almost at the end of our time here. Brandon, do you have anything that you would like to leave our listeners with? Maybe some closing points on AI and future of market research. Maybe a rant that's AI related. Maybe a rant that's not AI related. Yeah, just any closing thoughts here.
Yeah, I don't know that the amount of noise we've had in the industry over the past couple years is reflective of how much AI is actually being used and making a difference day to day. I mean, every single conference, every single session is like talking about AI. Every industry newsletter each week, each day, there's something about AI. But we're all just kind of circling and talking about the same thing over and over. Like there's really actually not that many radically different things today than there was like a year or two ago. They've come farther, they're better, but I challenge us as an industry to be like, there's still other cool things we can be doing as an industry that aren't AI. And if we look to the future, AI is absolutely going to play a role. We're all going to have to build new skills, be comfortable with it, understand how you stack and layer different AI methodologies with traditional market research methodologies. But that can't be it. We still have to be finding other new novel ways to gather insights, to frame problems, to ideate new solutions, because those are the human things that AI will not be as effective at. And if we want to have a role going forward and we want marketing departments and C-suites to see the value of market research, we can't just outsource all of our thinking to AI. We have to continue to be innovative and think different and solve problems and bring a human touch that AI won't be able to do. And sometimes I just worry that we're going through this period where so much focus and noise is on AI, we're kind of losing sight of the human things we have to be doing to maintain a seat at the table as an industry.
Incredibly well said.
Well said. I had two other topics. We're gonna have to have you back on. And boy,
I'd love to. This is fun.
this was fun, but this was I would call it almost intense, in-depth conversation about AI. So thanks for doing this. This is well over 40 minutes, and so that's really impressive. So thank you for coming on and having this discussion with us. I think that you're sparking some different thoughts in my head, and hopefully our listeners have as well. And you guys are doing some really cool stuff there. And I think you're going at it the right way. And from what do I expect a good market research company to attack this? very methodical, testing out lots of different things, and a little bit skeptical, right? That's how we should be attacking it. So, really impressive stuff. And if you all have any feedback, reach out to us, like and subscribe. If you disagree, please come on. This AI is such a crazy, evolving, complex topic, and we've discussed this in probably every episode we've had for a couple months now. And so we'd love to have you on if you disagree or have different thoughts. And reach out to Brandon if you have a lot more AI discussion. You want to pick his brain on all this stuff because it's really cool. And again, I'll close out with thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Absolute pleasure.
Have a great day, everybody.